But the Palestinians are not going to have self-determination here. They're not going to run Gaza. And the Israelis have already de facto annexed Gaza and de facto annexed the West Bank. And they're completely committed to ethnically cleansing Gaza and then the West Bank. I think the evidence is overwhelming on this.
John Mearsheimer just appeared on Piers Morgan's show and explained who will actually rule Gaza in these ceasefire conditions and beyond. Is there an avenue for actual peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians? What does it mean for the U.S.? And why is this ceasefire not going to last long? Let's get it from him. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Are you not encouraged by the scenes of so many Palestinians being allowed to go back to where their homeland was?
It's hard not to feel good about seeing the Palestinians return to their homes. It warms the cockles of my heart, although it's terribly depressing to see what's happened to their homes. But the more important question, Piers, is what is the political settlement here? There are two big questions. Who is going to run Gaza? In other words, is there going to be Palestinian self-determination? Are the Palestinians going to run Gaza? That's number one. And then number two, what is the political horizon? What is the end game here? And with regard to the question of who is going to run Gaza now, it's not going to be the Palestinians. It's going to be President Trump and apparently Tony Blair, and some of the Arab armies in the neighborhood are going to provide security. But the Palestinians are not going to have self-determination here. They're not going to run Gaza. And then, more importantly, in terms of the long term, there's not going to be any two-state solution. There's no political solution here. So this one's just going to go on and on.
Yeah, I got to agree with him totally there on 2 points. First of all, yeah, any reprieve from genocide and mass murder is a good thing. That's something that warms the cockles of my heart too, playing off what Mearsheimer said. But, any subdual of violence and, again, mass murder is a good thing. That should be, pleasing people in general. You got a lot of the neocons right now saying, oh, you guys aren't happy. You guys are just being silent about this. I just haven't seen it play out. I've seen a lot of the non-interventionists, the people that go against the Israel first mentality, say that this is a good thing. But they are critical, like Mearsheimer and myself, of the idea that this is going to lead to some long-lasting peace. It's not. There's no peace deal on the table in accordance with what, say, the Arab countries wanted after the 2002 Beirut summit, a Palestinian state, something like 190 countries in the world want. And I'm not saying just side with international consensus on this for the number of countries that want it, but because it's in the U.S. interest over bankrolling a genocide and giving Israel $32 billion in 2 years. Also, Mearsheimer is right when it comes to the specifics of who's going to run Gaza. Point 9 in this plan, it says that, a technocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee will have some power, but then it says it's subordinate to this new Board of Peace that will be headed by Donald Trump and Tony Blair. Trump and Blair seem to be more concerned about economic redevelopment here and not actual peace, creating that Gaza on the Riviera, probably roping in Jared Kushner and his ambitions for real estate development there to help. So yeah, he's right.
I mean, you're very downbeat about it, but others who are involved at the sort of sharp end of negotiations, they do believe that out of the hell of the last 2 years, there is a genuine opportunity and a genuine collective will from the neighboring Arab and Muslim countries, including Turkey, Egypt, UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, to try and use this as a way of getting to a two-state solution. Why are you so pessimistic about it?
I mean, Prime Minister Netanyahu has made it unequivocally clear on countless occasions that there's not going to be a two-state solution.
He has, but what if he's not there?
Unequivocally. It's a position that's widely shared in Israel. And after what's happened over the past 2 years, do you think any Israeli is going to be interested in a two-state solution? Probably the number you can count on one hand. It's just not going to happen.
He's right for what he's saying. Even the fiercest opposition to Netanyahu, like Yair Golan and Ehud Olmert, won't call for a Palestinian state. This goes far deeper than Netanyahu. This is a part of the rigid Zionist mentality within Israel that crosses political factions within the political elite in Israel. Mearsheimer's exactly right here. Nothing is saying that Smotrich or Ben-Gvir, whoever succeeds Netanyahu, if it's on the right, is going to accept that, just as it doesn't those who might take over on the Israeli left. It just doesn't seem feasible.
Israelis have already de facto annexed Gaza and de facto annexed the West Bank. Their principal goal now is to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians out of those two areas. The idea of ethnically cleansing Greater Israel has been wired into Zionism from the very beginning. This is why you had massive ethnic cleansing in 1948 and 1967. And here, after 2023, you had a big war, and the Israelis always see big wars as an opportunity to ethnically cleanse, and that's what they are trying to do.
Okay, but there are two things I would say about that which may counter that rather doom-laden narrative. One is President Trump, who has set his stall and his reputation and his legacy on this being a lasting peace. This is, by his own admission on the plane Air Force One last night, this is the biggest moment of his life that's unfurling here. And I think he is determined to try and bring lasting peace. And he is key to Israel's ability to continue prosecuting a war against Hamas or to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians. He's made it clear there can be no annexing of the West Bank. The Palestinians must be allowed to return home. So I'm encouraged by that. And there's a secondary issue, which is more of an economic issue, which is that before October the 7th, Saudi Arabia was making a lot of signals that they wanted to join the Abraham Accords, which would have a very significant financial, economic benefit for Israel if that happened. And that's been put on hold for this war. But, you know, the signals, again, coming from Saudi Arabia is that if this all gets resolved and if there's peace in Gaza and they can move towards a two-state solution, or at least have the sort of planks for that to go ahead, then they may join the Abraham Accords too, with all the benefit that would come to Israel. So there are two things there which I think would slightly counter your narrative.
Okay, as far as with Trump and him wanting this to be a big part of his legacy, maybe so, but the Israel lobby is so involved in Trump and the Trump administration, it might not be possible. Does he want, you know, the optics of the U.S. bankrolling a genocide? No, I don't think he wants that. He might not be able to escape it, but at the same time, he's premising that argument on the conditions as they exist now, which aren't even favorable because Israel has, you know, violated the ceasefire already in two major ways that I can tell. You know, we'll talk about that in a second. But they can use any kind of false flag attack to justify the re-implementation of violence, putting the annexation of Gaza right back on the table again, and Israeli settlements in Gaza, which Smotrich just talked about. After this ceasefire, Smotrich in the government talked about that there will be Israeli settlements in Gaza. He's even more, you know, bloodthirsty and genocidal than Netanyahu in some ways. So they can use any kind of false pretext or impetus or false flag to rupture these things and say, hey, we tried to put peace on the table, but these, you know, Palestinians that are indistinguishable from terrorists, all of them, including the young children we pull from the rubble, are responsible for initiating the violence. I think that's an actual prospect.
Well, I would make 2 points. First, I think you greatly underestimate, Piers, how deeply committed the Israelis are to ethnically cleansing both Gaza and the West Bank. The Israelis now have a situation where there are roughly as many Palestinians as there are Israeli Jews inside of Greater Israel. And this is an unacceptable situation for most Israelis. And they're completely committed to ethnically cleansing Gaza and then the West Bank. I think the evidence is overwhelming on this. Now, you say President Trump sees this as a great opportunity to prove that he's a statesman and he can bring peace to the Middle East. I think in principle that he'd love to do that. But I've written a book with Steve Walt on the Israel lobby, and there's absolutely no question in my mind that if President Trump gets rough with Prime Minister Netanyahu, Netanyahu will turn to the lobby, and the lobby will force Trump to back off. There's no way Trump is going to get tough with Netanyahu if he violates the ceasefire. Remember, he did that on March 18th.
This is exactly right. Mearsheimer is totally right here. Not only did he violate the ceasefire that Trump and his team, headed by Steve Witkoff, initiated right as Trump stepped into the Oval Office for the second term. You know, a lot of these people that are saying, you know, Trump is doing, you know, brilliant things that are just unmanifested genius right now. They're going to turn out to be great, brilliant 4D chess maneuvers when he was mad at Netanyahu for violating the ceasefire then in the Iran war that the U.S. joined, the 12-day war, as he called it. He was so mad at Netanyahu, you could tell. And then the next day, he's just basically fluffing Netanyahu, telling the Knesset to dismiss charges against him, calling him a war hero. It's so nauseating, but that's what Trump does. He's always done that. He's always been beholden to the Israel lobby since 2016, and on the campaign trail, where at one point he said, I just want to be neutral. I don't side with the Israelis necessarily or the Palestinians in the Middle East. And then he got a lot of backlash from Republican power centers after that and switched his tune very, very quickly in 2016. He's never gone back from that. And there's no reason to think that he would go back from that. Mearsheimer's right. The Israel lobby has its talons sank so deeply into Trump that there may be nowhere he can go, even if he wanted to. It's just the lobby is too fierce. And you say, hey, well, he doesn't have another election to be concerned about, but the rest of his political agenda does hang on how much support he loses or not. And the Israel First lobby is one of his biggest support bases. But take a look at this. Israel's already violated the ceasefire in two major ways. We got our friend Dave DeCamp here from antiwar.com talking about that, how Israel's killed many Palestinians in successive days. You know, despite the fact that there's supposed to be a ceasefire, this isn't making major mainstream news, but it is being covered by some entities. And besides this, you have a story where Israel, in accordance with the agreement that it signed, its representatives signed on October 9th, was supposed to allow 600 aid trucks into Gaza each day under these ceasefire terms. They're only allowing 300. So we already have Israel violating the ceasefire in two ways. There might even be more that I'm not immediately aware of, but you can tell they don't intend to honor this ceasefire, not by a long shot. Now, is Netanyahu saying, yeah, we're going to annex Gaza? Not quite yet, but here's what I'm worried about, is that they're trying to provoke a Palestinian reaction or a Hamas reaction where, you know, Hamas makes some kind of minor attack, or there's a false flag on the American and Israeli side to draw bloodshed back, renew the hostilities again. And there's another story here that Dave DeCamp printed that 2 U.S. officials said that Hamas was not violating the Gaza ceasefire deal, which that is significant to me, because if you're going to say right now that the U.S. is going to just right now, you know, eliminate the possibility of continuing the ceasefire, this seems to go against that, which is actually optimistic for me to look at that and see how the administration is reacting in this way. But again, if this is going to provoke a reaction or there's going to be a false flag, they can renew the violence again. But thanks Dave DeCamp and his great work at antiwar.com. But what do you think? Let me know down below. Is Mearsheimer right? Is this going to be a lasting peace that goes against, you know, the doomsday narrative, or however Piers Morgan put it? Or is Mearsheimer right? Is this going to be just a temporary ceasefire that's violated, that the U.S. is drawn back into supporting Israel no matter what? Let me know in the comments down below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Piers Morgan. Thank you for this interview. Say what you want about Piers. He does get good guests to talk about important issues like Mearsheimer. I really appreciate that. And also, if you like this video and my commentary, please consider becoming a YouTube member. You can do that by clicking the join button down below. That will help support my channel, and in return for that, I'll give you access to all my videos, the ones that are members only, before they go live to the general public on YouTube. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.